It was a bright, sunny Saturday morning in a little place called Oakwood Hills. The birds were chirping, the sky was blue, and the air smelled like fresh grass and flowers. In one small house on Maple Street lived a boy named Timmy Jackson. Timmy was 12 years old, with messy brown hair and a big, happy grin. That morning, he was super proud of himself. Why? Because he had just done something cool. He stuck a little flag right in the middle of his front yard. This wasn't just any flag. It was a bright red one, small enough to fit in your hand, with a big yellow smiley face on it. Timmy had drawn that smiley face himself with a marker. He didn't have fancy paints or anything, just a plain old marker he found in his desk. To him, it looked awesome. He planted the flag in the dirt, stepped back, and smiled. The boring green grass didn't look so boring anymore. It was like his yard had a little bit of him in it now, something fun and happy. Timmy stood there, hands on his hips, feeling like a king. He didn't have a big castle or a crown, but that flag made him feel special. He thought maybe the neighbors would see it and smile too. Maybe they'd wave at him and say, "Hey, Timmy, nice flag." That's what he hoped, anyway. He didn't know it yet, but not everyone was going to like his little red flag. Oh no. Trouble was coming, and it was coming fast. Across the street from Timmy's house lived a lady named Mrs. Karen Baxter. Now, if you've ever had a neighbor who's always watching, always complaining, then you know exactly what Mrs. Karen was like. She was the boss of the neighborhood, at least, she thought she was. She didn't have a real job like a teacher or a firefighter, but she acted like she was in charge of everything. Her house was perfect. The grass was always cut just right, the flowers were always bright, and her mailbox never had a speck of dirt on it. She liked things neat and tidy, and she didn't like it when anything looked different. Mrs. Karen had gray hair tied up in a tight bun, and she wore glasses that sat low on her nose. She was always peeking out her window, her sharp eyes looking for something to fuss about. If a dog barked too loud, she'd complain. If a kid rode a bike too fast, she'd shake her head and mutter. Most people in Oakwood Hills just ignored her. They'd see her coming and think, "Oh, it's just Karen being Karen." But Timmy? He was new to all this. He didn't know Mrs. Karen yet. He didn't know she was about to make his sunny day a whole lot less sunny. That morning, Timmy was still standing by his flag, looking at it with pride. The sun was shining down, making the red cloth glow like a tiny fire in the grass. He didn't hear the creak of Mrs. Karen's front door opening. He didn't see her step onto her porch, her arms crossed tight across her chest. But she was there, staring right at him. Her eyes narrowed as she spotted that little red flag with its goofy smiley face. To Timmy, it was fun. To Mrs. Karen, it was a problem. A big, messy, ugly problem. You see, Mrs. Karen had rules in her head. Not just her rules, neighborhood rules, she called them. She was part of something called the HOA, which stood for Homeowners Association. It was a group of grown ups who made sure all the houses looked nice and followed the same boring plans. No loud colors. No weird decorations. Everything had to be perfect, just the way Mrs. Karen liked it. And that little red flag. It didn't fit her perfect picture. Not one bit. Timmy didn't know about the HOA. He didn't know about Mrs. Karen's rules. He was just a kid who wanted to have some fun. He didn't know that sticking that flag in the ground was like waving a big sign that said, "Come yell at me." But that's exactly what he'd done. Mrs. Karen saw it, and she wasn't happy. She didn't smile at the smiley face. She didn't think, "Oh, how cute." Nope. She thought, "This is wrong. This is bad. I need to fix it." Now, here's where things get interesting. Timmy wasn't just any regular kid. Sure, he looked normal. He had a blue t-shirt, shorts, and sneakers with holes in them. He liked video games and pizza, just like most 12-year-olds. But there was something about Timmy that nobody in Oakwood Hills knew. Not the neighbors. Not even his best friend, Joey, who lived 2 houses down. Timmy had a secret. A big one. And it wasn't something silly, like he was hiding a pet frog in his room. No, this was a secret that could change everything. Even Timmy's parents didn't talk about it much. Sometimes they'd whisper to each other when they thought he wasn't listening. Timmy would hear bits and pieces like "keep it quiet" or "not yet," but he didn't ask questions. He figured it was grown-up stuff, and he was too busy playing or drawing to care. But that secret? It was tied to him. It was part of who he was. And that little red flag with the smiley face? It wasn't just a fun idea he had. It meant something. Something big. Something Mrs. Karen would never guess in a million years. Let's go back to that sunny morning. Timmy was still out there, standing by his flag. He didn't see Mrs. Karen yet, but the neighbors did. Old Mr. Thompson, who lived next door, was watering his plants. He peeked over his fence and saw Mrs. Karen glaring across the street. "Uh-oh," he muttered to himself. "Here we go again." Down the road, Mrs. Lopez was walking her dog, a fluffy little thing named Peanut. She stopped and watched, too. Everyone knew Mrs. Karen's temper tantrums. They'd seen her yell about trash cans left out too long or kids playing too loud. But this time, it was Timmy in her sights. Timmy's mom was inside the house, making lunch. She didn't know what was brewing outside. She didn't know her son's little flag was about to start a war with the lady across the street. Timmy's dad wasn't home, he was at work, doing something important. That's all Timmy knew. His dad left early and came back late, always wearing a serious face. Timmy didn't think much about it. Dads had jobs, right? That's how it worked. But his dad's job wasn't just any job. It was part of the secret. A big part. The sun climbed higher in the sky, and the day got warmer. Timmy wiped some sweat off his forehead and decided to grab a drink. He turned to head inside, leaving his flag standing tall in the yard. It waved a little in the breeze, the smiley face looking happy and proud. Timmy didn't think anything could ruin this day. It was perfect. The birds were singing, the grass was green, and his flag was awesome. What could go wrong? But Mrs. Karen had other plans. She stood on her porch, her phone already in her hand. She wasn't just going to complain to Timmy or his mom. Oh no. She was going big. She was going to call someone to make that flag disappear. She didn't care that it was just a kid's toy. To her, it was a rule breaker. A troublemaker. Something that didn't belong in her perfect little world. Timmy didn't hear her yet. He didn't see her tapping her foot, her face getting redder by the second. He didn't know she was about to turn his quiet Saturday into a giant mess. But the neighbors did. Mr. Thompson shook his head and went back to his plants. Mrs. Lopez tugged Peanut's leash and hurried away. They'd seen this before. They knew Mrs. Karen didn't mess around. When she got mad, she got loud. And Timmy? Poor Timmy was about to find out. So, what was Timmy's secret? Why did that little flag matter so much? Was it just a silly drawing, or was it something more? You're probably wondering, right? Good. Because this story is about to get wild. Stick around, because what happens next is going to flip Mrs. Karen's world upside down and maybe yours too. Timmy was almost at his front door when he heard a sound. It was a loud huff, like someone blowing air out of their nose really hard. He stopped and turned around. There she was, Mrs. Karen, standing on her porch, staring right at him. Her arms were still crossed, and her face looked like she'd just eaten a sour lemon. Timmy tilted his head. He didn't know her name yet. He just knew she was the lady who lived across the street, the one his mom sometimes called nosy neighbor. "Hi," Timmy said, waving at her. He thought maybe she'd wave back. Maybe she'd smile. But she didn't. She just stared harder, like his wave made her even madder. Timmy dropped his hand and shrugged. Okay then, he muttered to himself. He turned back to the door, figuring she was just grumpy. Grown ups got grumpy sometimes. No big deal. But it was a big deal to Mrs. Karen. She didn't like that flag, and she didn't like Timmy's wave. To her, he was being cheeky. Rude, even. She didn't see a kid having fun. She saw a troublemaker who needed to be stopped. She stepped off her porch, her slippers slapping the concrete. She marched right to the edge of her yard, stopping where her perfect grass met the sidewalk. "Young man," she called out, her voice sharp like a teacher's. Timmy froze, his hand on the doorknob. He turned around again, slower this time. "Yeah," he said, blinking at her. He wasn't scared, not yet, but he was confused. Why was she yelling at him? He hadn't done anything wrong. At least, he didn't think so. That flag. Mrs. Karen said, pointing at it like it was a giant bug she wanted to squash. What is it doing there? This neighborhood has rules, you know. Her voice got louder with every word, and Timmy just stood there, not sure what to say. Rules? What rules? It was just a flag. A little red flag with a smiley face. How could that break any rules? It's mine, Timmy said finally. I made it. I thought it looked cool. He smiled a little, hoping she'd get it. Hoping she'd see it was no big deal. But Mrs. Karen didn't smile back. Her face got even redder, and her eyes got even narrower. She looked like a dragon about to breathe fire. Cool, she repeated, like it was the dumbest word she'd ever heard. That's not cool. That's a mess. It doesn't belong here. Take it down right now. She stomped her foot, and Timmy jumped a little. He wasn't used to grown ups yelling at him like that. His mom and dad never yelled unless he broke something big, like the time he accidentally kicked a soccer ball through the garage window. But this was just a flag. I don't get it, Timmy said, scratching his head. It's not hurting anybody. It's just sitting there. He looked at the flag, then back at her. He really didn't understand. Why was she so mad? It was his yard, wasn't it? He could put stuff in it if he wanted to. Right? Wrong. Not to Mrs. Karen. She took a deep breath, like she was trying not to explode. This is Oakwood Hills, she said, talking slow like he was dumb. We don't put junk in our yards. We keep things nice. That flag is ugly, and it's against the rules. You need to take it down, or I'll make you take it down. Timmy frowned. Ugly. His flag wasn't ugly. He worked hard on that smiley face. It wasn't perfect, the eyes were a little wobbly, and the mouth was kinda crooked, but he liked it. It made him happy. Why couldn't she just leave it alone? He opened his mouth to say something, but then he heard another voice. Timmy, what's going on? It was his mom, poking her head out the door. She had a sandwich in her hand. She'd been making lunch and she looked tired. She saw Mrs. Karen standing there, all puffed up and mad, and she sighed. Oh, Karen, not again, she said under her breath, so quiet Timmy barely heard it. It's about my flag, Timmy said, pointing at it. She doesn't like it? He looked at his mom, hoping she'd fix this. Moms were good at fixing things, right? But Mrs. Karen didn't give her a chance to talk. That's right. Mrs. Karen snapped, turning to Timmy's mom. Your son put that awful thing in the yard, and it's ruining everything. This neighborhood has standards, and I won't let some kid mess it up. She waved her phone in the air, like it was a weapon. I'm calling the HOA right now if you don't take it down. Timmy's mom rubbed her forehead. Karen, it's just a flag, she said. It's not hurting anyone. Can't you let it go? She sounded calm, but Timmy could tell she was annoyed. He'd heard that tone before, like when he forgot to clean his room for the third time in a row. No, I can't let it go. Mrs. Karen said, her voice getting louder again. This is my neighborhood too, and I won't stand for this nonsense. You tell him to take it down, or I'll handle it myself. She turned and marched back to her house, her slippers slapping louder than ever. Timmy looked at his mom. Do I have to take it down? He asked. He didn't want to. That flag was his. He made it. It was special. But his mom just shrugged. Let's see what she does, she said. She's all talk, probably. She went back inside, leaving Timmy standing there, staring at his flag. He didn't know what to do. He didn't want to fight, but he didn't want to lose his flag either. What he didn't know, what nobody knew yet, was that this wasn't just about a flag. It was about something bigger. Something hidden. Something tied to Timmy and his family. Mrs. Karen thought she was the boss, but she had no idea who she was messing with. That little red flag. It wasn't just a decoration. It was a clue. A tiny piece of a secret that was about to shake up Oakwood Hills. So, what do you think Timmy's secret could be? Why does that flag matter? Don't go anywhere, because the story is about to get crazy. Stick around, you won't believe what happens next. By noon, the sun was high in the sky over Oakwood Hills, and things were about to get loud. Timmy Jackson, that 12-year-old kid with the messy brown hair, was still outside. He was holding a glass of lemonade his mom had just given him. It was cold and sweet, and he was taking little sips while looking at his bright red flag with the smiley face. He liked how it waved a tiny bit in the wind. It made him happy. But that happy feeling? It wasn't going to last long. Across the street, Mrs. Karen Baxter was done waiting. She'd been watching Timmy's flag all morning from her window, her face getting madder and madder. Now, she couldn't take it anymore. She stormed out of her house like a tornado, her arms crossed tight over her chest. Her face was redder than Timmy's flag and her eyes were squinted like she was staring into the sun. She marched right to the edge of her yard and stopped, pointing at Timmy's flag like it was a big, scary monster. "That thing is an eyesore," she yelled, her voice loud enough to make the birds stop chirping. "It's ugly. It's awful. This neighborhood has rules, young man. Rules you're breaking." She shook her finger at the flag, then at Timmy. "I'm calling the HOA and maybe even 911. You can't just do whatever you want around here." Timmy just stood there, holding his lemonade. He didn't move. He didn't say anything. He just blinked at her with his big brown eyes, watching her every move. His glass was sweaty from the cold, and a little drop of water slid down onto his hand, but he didn't care. He wasn't sure why Mrs. Karen was so mad. It was just a flag. A little red flag he'd made himself. What was the big deal? Mrs. Karen kept going. "Do you hear me?" she shouted. "This isn't a playground. This is Oakwood Hills. We don't put junk in our yards. That flag doesn't belong here." She stomped her foot, and her slipper made a loud slap on the sidewalk. She looked like she might explode, her face getting redder by the second. Timmy's mom heard the yelling and peeked out the front door. She was still holding a butter knife from making sandwiches, and she had that tired look on her face again. She saw Mrs. Karen pointing and shouting, and she sighed. "Oh, Karen," she said quietly to herself. Then she stepped outside a little more and said, "It's just a flag, Karen. Relax. It's not hurting anybody." But Mrs. Karen didn't relax. Not even a little. She spun around to face Timmy's mom, her arms still crossed. "Just a flag," she snapped. "Just a flag. No, it's not just a flag. It's a mess. It's against the rules. You should know better. Your kid is ruining this neighborhood." She pulled her phone out of her pocket and waved it in the air like it was a magic wand. "I'm calling the HOA right now. And if that doesn't work, I'll call 911. I mean it." Timmy's mom rolled her eyes. "Karen, come on," she said. "It's a kid's flag. It's not a crime. Why are you making this so big?" She sounded calm, but you could tell she was getting annoyed. She didn't like Mrs. Karen yelling at her son. She didn't like any of this. But Mrs. Karen didn't care what Timmy's mom thought. She was on a mission. "I'm making it big because it is big," Mrs. Karen said, her voice getting sharper. "This neighborhood has rules for a reason. We can't have disrespectful kids putting up whatever they want. It ruins property values. It makes us look bad. I won't stand for it." She started tapping on her phone, muttering under her breath. Disrespectful kids, no manners, ruining everything. Timmy still didn't say a word. He just stood there, sipping his lemonade, watching her. The neighbors started peeking out their windows now. Old Mr. Thompson, the guy next door, pulled his curtain back a little and shook his head. Mrs. Lopez, down the street, stopped walking her dog, Peanut, and stared. Everyone could hear Mrs. Karen yelling. Everyone could see Timmy standing there, quiet as a mouse. Poor Timmy, they thought. He was just a kid, right? What could he do against a grown-up like Mrs. Karen? She was loud. She was bossy. She always got her way. But here's the thing, Timmy wasn't scared. Not one bit. Mrs. Karen was yelling and waving her phone, but Timmy didn't even flinch. He took another sip of his lemonade, slow and calm, like he was watching a funny show. His big brown eyes followed her as she stomped around, but his face didn't change. He didn't frown. He didn't cry. He didn't even look mad. Instead, a tiny little smile crept onto his lips. Just a small one, like he knew something Mrs. Karen didn't. And oh boy, did he ever. Mrs. Karen didn't notice his smile. She was too busy dialing her phone. "Hello," she said when someone picked up. "Yes, this is Karen Baxter from Oakwood Hills. I need to report a problem. There's a kid here breaking the rules. He put an ugly flag in his yard, and it's ruining everything. Yes, I want someone out here right away." She nodded as she talked, like she was the most important person in the world. Timmy's mom sighed again and stepped all the way outside now. "Karen, you're being silly," she said. "It's a flag. It's not a big deal. Why are you calling people over this?" She put her hands on her hips, the butter knife still in one hand, and looked at Mrs. Karen like she was crazy. "Silly," Mrs. Karen said, turning off her phone and glaring at Timmy's mom. "Silly? No, what's silly is you letting your kid do whatever he wants. This isn't a free-for-all. We have standards here. That flag is an eyesore, and it's got to go." She pointed at it again, her finger shaking a little, she was so mad. Timmy finally moved. He took a step closer to his flag and looked at it. The smiley face was still there, bright and happy. He didn't think it was an eyesore. He thought it was cool. He looked back at Mrs. Karen, then at his mom. "Why does she hate it so much?" he asked, his voice quiet but clear. "Because she's Karen," his mom said with a little laugh. "She hates anything that's not perfect." She shook her head and looked at Mrs. Karen. "You need to chill out. It's a kid's flag. It's not hurting you. Not hurting me," Mrs. Karen said, her voice going high and squeaky. "It's hurting the whole neighborhood. People will see it and think we don't care. They'll think we let kids run wild. I won't let that happen." She tapped her phone again, muttering about calling more people. The neighbors kept watching. Mr. Thompson leaned out his door now, his watering can in his hand. "What's she on about this time?" he called to Mrs. Lopez, who was still standing down the street with Peanut. Mrs. Lopez shrugged. "Something about a flag," she said. "She's losing it again." They both looked at Timmy, standing there with his lemonade, and felt bad for him. He didn't deserve this. He was just a kid having fun. But Timmy didn't look like he felt bad. He didn't look sad or worried. He just kept sipping his lemonade, that tiny smile still on his face. Mrs. Karen was yelling, his mom was arguing, and the neighbors were whispering, but Timmy? He was calm. Too calm. Like he wasn't just a kid caught in a fight. Like he had a trick up his sleeve. Mrs. Karen hung up her phone and crossed her arms again. "The HOA is coming," she said, her voice smug. "They'll make you take it down. And if they don't, I'll call the police. I'm not kidding." She glared at Timmy, then at his mom. "You'll see. This isn't over." Timmy's mom groaned. "Karen, you're being ridiculous," she said. "Call whoever you want. It's a flag. You're not going to win this." She turned to Timmy. "Come inside, honey. Let her yell all she wants." She waved her hand like Mrs. Karen was a fly she could shoo away. But Timmy didn't go inside. He stayed right where he was, holding his lemonade. He looked at Mrs. Karen, then at his flag, then back at her. "It's my flag," he said, his voice soft but firm. "I like it. I'm not taking it down." He took another sip, and that little smile got a tiny bit bigger. Mrs. Karen's mouth dropped open. "What did you say?" she asked, like she couldn't believe it. "You're not taking it down?" "Oh, you'll take it down, young man. You'll take it down when the HOA gets here. And if you don't, the police will make you." She stomped her foot again, harder this time. Timmy just shrugged. "Okay," he said, like it didn't matter. He didn't sound scared. He didn't sound mad. He sounded, sure. Like he wasn't worried about the HOA or the police or anything. Mrs. Karen blinked at him, confused. Why wasn't he upset? Why wasn't he running inside to hide? Kids were supposed to be scared of grown ups yelling, right? But Timmy wasn't like other kids. He had that secret something big, something hidden. Mrs. Karen didn't know it. His mom didn't say it. The neighbors didn't guess it. But Timmy knew. And that little red flag. It wasn't just a flag. It was part of the secret. A tiny clue to something huge. Mrs. Karen turned back to her house, still muttering. "You'll see," she said over her shoulder. "This isn't over. Not by a long shot." She marched up her steps, her phone clutched tight in her hand. She was going to fight this. She was going to win. At least, that's what she thought. Timmy's mom looked at him and frowned. "You okay, Timmy?" she asked. "She's just being loud. Don't worry about it." "I'm fine," Timmy said, and he meant it. He wasn't worried. He wasn't scared. He took another sip of his lemonade and looked at his flag. The smiley face stared back at him, happy as ever. Mrs. Karen could yell all she wanted. She could call whoever she wanted. Timmy didn't care. He had something she didn't know about. Something that made all her noise seem small. The neighbors went back to their houses, still whispering. "Poor kid," Mr. Thompson said as he closed his door. "She's too much," Mrs. Lopez agreed, tugging Peanut along. They all thought Timmy was in trouble. They all thought Mrs. Karen would win. But they were wrong. So wrong. Because Timmy wasn't just a kid. And that flag wasn't just a flag. Mrs. Karen was picking a fight she didn't understand. And soon, very soon, she was going to find out why Timmy wasn't scared. Oh boy, was she in for a surprise. The next hour in Oakwood Hills was crazy, like a storm hitting out of nowhere. Timmy Jackson, that 12-year-old kid with the messy hair and the red flag, had just been standing there sipping lemonade when everything went wild. Mrs. Karen Baxter, the loud lady from across the street, wasn't done with her yelling. Nope, she was just getting started. And now, she'd called in backup. A fancy car pulled up to Timmy's house. It was shiny and black, the kind you see in movies where important people step out. A man got out, wearing a suit and tie. He looked like he worked in an office or maybe a bank. He had a clipboard in his hand and a serious face. This was the HOA guy, the one Mrs. Karen had called. HOA stood for Homeowners Association, a group of grown ups who made rules about how houses should look. And this guy? He was here to check out Timmy's little red flag with the smiley face. Mrs. Karen ran over to him before he could even close his car door. "Finally," she said, her voice loud and sharp. "You're here. Look at that thing." She pointed at Timmy's flag, still stuck in the yard. "It's an eyesore. It's against all our standards. We have proper decor rules here, and that flag is breaking every single one." She waved her arms around like she was trying to scare off a flock of birds. The HOA guy nodded, his face still serious. He didn't say much, just "uh-huh" and "I see," while Mrs. Karen kept talking. She went on and on about how the flag was ugly, how it didn't fit the neighborhood, how it made everything look bad. "We can't have this," she said. "Kids can't just put junk wherever they want. You need to do something about it." Timmy was still outside, holding his lemonade. He watched the HOA guy and Mrs. Karen from his spot by the flag. His big brown eyes followed them, but he didn't move. He didn't say anything. He just stood there, quiet as a mouse. His mom came out again, wiping her hands on a towel. She'd been cleaning up from lunch, but now she had to deal with this. The HOA guy walked over to her, his shoes clicking on the sidewalk. "Ma'am," he said, holding his clipboard tight. "I'm with the Homeowners Association. We've had a complaint about this, flag." He pointed at it with his pen. "It doesn't meet our rules. I'm afraid it has to go. If it stays, you'll get a fine. That means you'll have to pay money." Timmy's mom rolled her eyes so hard you could almost hear it. "A fine," she said. "For a flag? Are you serious? It's just a kid's toy." She looked at Mrs. Karen, who was standing behind the HOA guy with a big smirk on her face. "This is ridiculous," Timmy's mom said. "It's not hurting anybody." The HOA guy shrugged. "Rules are rules," he said. "I don't make them. I just follow them. Take it down, or the fine comes next week." He scribbled something on his clipboard, like he was writing a note to make it official. Timmy's mom sighed and turned to Timmy. "All right, honey," she said. "Just take it down for now. We'll figure this out later. I don't want to deal with a fine." She sounded tired, like she was done with all this nonsense. She didn't want to fight anymore, not right then, anyway. Timmy looked at her, then at the flag. "Fine," he said. His voice was super calm. Too calm. Like he didn't care at all. He put his lemonade down on the grass, walked over to the flag, and pulled it out of the dirt. The little stick came up easy, and a tiny clump of soil stuck to the bottom. He brushed it off with his hand, nice and slow, like he had all the time in the world. Then he tucked the flag under his arm, holding it close like it was a treasure. Mrs. Karen's smirk got bigger. She crossed her arms and nodded, like she'd just won a big prize. "There," she said. "That's better. See? Was that so hard? Now the neighborhood looks right again." She looked at the HOA guy, then at Timmy's mom, like she was the queen of everything. She thought it was over. She thought she'd beat Timmy and his silly flag. Oh, how wrong she was. But then Timmy did something weird. Really weird. He didn't just go inside like his mom told him to. Nope. He walked to the edge of his yard, right where the grass met the sidewalk. He stopped there and turned to face Mrs. Karen. She was still standing by the HOA guy, looking all proud of herself. Timmy stared at her, his big brown eyes locked on hers. And then he waved. It wasn't a friendly wave. It wasn't a hi, neighbor, kind of wave. It was slow. Sneaky. Like he was saying something without words. His hand moved back and forth, super calm, and that tiny smile came back to his face. The same smile he'd had before, when Mrs. Karen was yelling. It wasn't big, but it was there just enough to make you wonder. Mrs. Karen huffed. She made a loud noise, like a horse snorting, and turned away. "Rude little boy," she muttered, loud enough for everyone to hear. "No manners at all." She didn't like that wave. She didn't like Timmy's smile. To her, it was like he was making fun of her. She stomped back toward her house, her slippers slapping the ground. The HOA guy, though. He didn't turn away. He squinted at Timmy, his eyes narrowing like he was trying to figure something out. He tilted his head a little and scratched it with his pen. "Wait a sec," he mumbled to himself. He didn't say it loud, but Timmy heard it. The guy's serious face changed for a second, like he'd seen Timmy before. Like he knew something. But then he shook his head, like he wasn't sure, and went back to his clipboard. "All right," he said to Timmy's mom. "It's down. That's all I need. Have a good day." He turned and walked back to his fancy car. Timmy's mom watched him go, then looked at Timmy. "What was that wave about?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. She wasn't mad, just curious. Timmy just shrugged. "Nothing," he said, still holding the flag under his arm. "Just waving." He picked up his lemonade and took a sip, acting like it was no big deal. But it was a big deal. The neighbors saw it. Old Mr. Thompson was still by his fence, pretending to water his plants. He'd watched the whole thing, the HOA guy, Mrs. Karen, and Timmy's weird wave. "That kid's up to something," he said to himself, shaking his head. Down the street, Mrs. Lopez and her dog, Peanut, were still there. She'd seen it too. "Did you see that?" she called to Mr. Thompson. He waved at her like he's not scared at all. Mr. Thompson nodded. "Yep," he said. "Something's funny about that boy." They started whispering, and soon other neighbors were talking too. The lady next door, Mrs. Carter, peeked out her window and saw Timmy walking back to his house. "Who is that kid, really?" she said to her cat, who didn't answer. Whispers spread like wildfire, fast and hot. Everyone was starting to wonder. Timmy was just a kid, right? Just a regular 12-year-old with a flag. Or was he something more? Timmy went inside, his flag still tucked under his arm. His mom followed him, closing the door behind them. For a minute, it seemed like the story was over. Mrs. Karen had won, the flag was down, and the HOA guy was gone. The neighborhood was quiet again, well, almost quiet. You could still hear Mrs. Karen muttering on her porch, bragging to herself about how she'd fixed everything. But nope, this wasn't the end. Not even close. This was just the beginning. Timmy sat down on the couch inside, his lemonade in one hand and his flag in the other. He didn't look sad about taking it down. He didn't look mad at Mrs. Karen. He looked happy. Like he'd planned this. Like he wanted her to make a big fuss. His mom sat next to him. "You sure you're okay?" she asked. "I know you like that flag." She patted his shoulder, thinking he might be upset deep down. "I'm fine," Timmy said, and he smiled at her. Not a sneaky smile this time, a real one. "It's all good, Mom." He set the flag on the couch beside him and took another sip of his lemonade. He didn't say anything else, but his eyes were bright, like he was thinking about something big. Outside, the neighbors kept talking. Mr. Thompson went inside but left his curtains open, still watching Timmy's house. Mrs. Lopez walked Peanut home, but she kept looking back over her shoulder. Mrs. Carter fed her cat and mumbled, "Something's not right." They all felt it, something strange was going on. That wave wasn't just a wave. That calm wasn't just calm. Timmy was hiding something, and they could tell. Mrs. Karen didn't notice any of this. She was too busy feeling like a winner. She stood on her porch, her arms crossed again, nodding to herself. "That's how it's done," she said out loud. "I fixed it. No more ugly flag. The neighborhood's safe now." She didn't see the neighbors whispering. She didn't hear the HOA guys wait a sec, she didn't know Timmy was smiling inside his house. She thought she'd won, but she hadn't. Not yet. Timmy's flag was down, sure. But that didn't mean the fight was over. That little red flag with the smiley face? It wasn't gone for good. Timmy was holding it, keeping it close. And that wave? That sneaky, slow wave. It was a hint. A tiny clue. Something was coming, something Mrs. Karen didn't expect. Something the neighbors didn't understand. Something tied to Timmy and his secret. The hour passed, and the sun moved a little lower in the sky. Oakwood Hills looked normal again, quiet houses, green grass, blue sky. But it wasn't normal. Not really. Timmy was inside, calm and smiling. The neighbors were whispering, curious and confused. Mrs. Karen was bragging, loud and clueless. And that flag? It was waiting. Waiting for the right moment. This wasn't the end of the story. Oh no. This was just the start. Things were about to get wilder, way wilder. Timmy wasn't done. His secret wasn't out. And Mrs. Karen? She had no idea what was coming her way. By late afternoon, the sun was starting to dip in Oakwood Hills. The sky turned a soft orange, and the air felt a little cooler. Timmy Jackson, that 12-year-old kid with the messy brown hair, was inside his house, sitting on the couch. His little red flag with the smiley face was next to him, still tucked under his arm from earlier. He'd taken it down like his mom asked, but he wasn't upset. He was calm, super calm, and sipping his lemonade like nothing big was happening. But something big was about to happen. Oh yeah, it was going to be wild. Outside, Mrs. Karen Baxter was still on her porch. She'd been out there all day, watching Timmy's house like a hawk. She thought she'd won. The flag was down, the HOA guy had come and gone, and she was feeling like the boss of everything. She'd even stopped muttering to herself and started talking loud, telling anyone who'd listen how she'd fix the neighborhood. "See," she said to the air. "I told them. No more junk in the yards. I'm in charge here." She was so proud, her chest puffed out like a big balloon. Then it happened. A police car rolled up to Timmy's house. Its lights weren't flashing, and it didn't make that loud siren noise, but it was still a real police car, white with blue stripes and the word police in big letters on the side. It parked right in front of Timmy's yard, and the engine turned off. Mrs. Karen saw it, and her eyes got wide. She clapped her hands together, loud and fast, like she'd just gotten the best present ever. "See," she shouted, turning to the neighbors who were starting to peek out again. "I told you I'd call the cops. I said I would, and I did. That kid's in big trouble now." She bounced on her toes, her slippers flapping against the porch. She looked so happy, like she'd finally gotten her way. She thought the police were here to yell at Timmy, maybe even take him away. She thought she was the hero of Oakwood Hills. The neighbors heard her yelling and started coming outside. Old Mr. Thompson stepped out his door, still holding his watering can. Mrs. Lopez tugged her dog, Peanut, back up the street to see what was going on. Mrs. Carter opened her window and leaned out, her cat sitting on the sill next to her. They all crowded around, standing on their lawns or the sidewalk, watching the police car. They whispered to each other, their voices low and fast. "Is Timmy in trouble?" Mrs. Lopez asked Mr. Thompson. "Looks like it," he said, scratching his head. Karen called the cops. That flag must have really set her off. Poor kid, Mrs. Carter said from her window. He's just a boy. What's he done to deserve this? They all thought the same thing, Timmy was toast. Mrs. Karen had won. The police were here to back her up, and that little red flag was going to get him in hot water. They felt bad for him, standing there so quiet and small against a big, loud grown-up like Mrs. Karen. The crowd got bigger, everyone waiting to see what would happen next. Mrs. Karen kept talking, her voice ringing out over the street. I told you all, she said, pointing at the police car. I said I'd call them. That flag's illegal. It's against the rules. Now they're here to take care of it. You'll see. She nodded to herself, her gray hair bouncing in its tight bun. She was so sure of herself, so sure she'd finally beaten Timmy and his mom. But then the car door opened, and something crazy happened. Really crazy. Out stepped a man, a tall, tough-looking guy in a police uniform. His badge shone in the afternoon sun, and his hat sat straight on his head. He was big, with strong arms and a deep voice. And he was grinning ear to ear, like he was about to tell a funny joke. Everyone froze. Mrs. Karen stopped clapping. The neighbors stopped whispering. Even Peanut, the little dog, stopped wagging his tail. Hey, Timmy, the police officer called, his voice loud and friendly. He waved at the house, like he knew exactly who was inside. You in there, buddy? Timmy heard him. He jumped off the couch, still holding his flag, and ran to the door. He pushed it open and stepped outside, his sneakers slapping the porch. Hey, Officer Daniels, he yelled back, waving with one hand. Then he ran down the steps, right toward the police car, and get this, he high-fived the cop. Their hands smacked together loud enough for everyone to hear. Timmy laughed, a big, happy laugh, and pointed at the flag under his arm. Told you it'd get her worked up, he said, still giggling. Officer Daniels chuckled, a deep, rumbling sound. You're right, kid, he said. She's loud. Real loud. He patted Timmy on the shoulder, like they were best friends. They stood there by the police car, grinning at each other like nothing was wrong. Mrs. Karen's jaw dropped. Literally dropped, like in a cartoon. Her mouth hung open so wide you could see her teeth, and her eyes bugged out behind her glasses. What's going on, she sputtered, her voice all shaky. She took a step forward, her slippers tripping over each other. Arrest him. That flag's illegal. He broke the rules. What are you doing? The neighbors gasped. They looked at each other, then at Timmy, then at Officer Daniels. What was happening? Why was the cop high-fiving Timmy? Why was he laughing? This wasn't what they expected. This wasn't what Mrs. Karen expected either. She thought the police were here to punish Timmy, not joke around with him. She blinked fast, like she couldn't believe her eyes. Officer Daniels turned to her, still smiling. Ma'am, he said, his voice calm but firm. Calm down. There's no arrest happening here. This isn't what you think. He put his hands on his hips, standing tall next to Timmy. That's no ordinary kid you're yelling at. Mrs. Karen shook her head. What, she said, her voice getting loud again. What do you mean? He's just a kid. A rude little boy with an ugly flag. Arrest him. Do your job. She pointed at Timmy, her finger wobbling in the air. Timmy grinned wider and held up his flag. The smiley face on it looked back at everyone, bright and goofy. Officer Daniels shook his head again. Nope, he said. You've got it all wrong. Timmy's dad runs the police station. He's the boss of all us cops. And Timmy? He's been helping us out. He's my best little helper. The crowd gasped again, louder this time. Mrs. Karen's face went white as a ghost. Her arms dropped to her sides, and her phone slipped out of her hand, clattering onto the porch. What? She whispered, like she couldn't get the words out right. Officer Daniels nodded. That's right, he said. We've been testing some neighborhood watch stuff around here. You know, keeping an eye on things, making sure everything's safe. Timmy's been part of it. That flag. It's not just a toy. It's a signal we use. A little red flag means something to us cops. And you, ma'am. You just called 911 on my best helper over it? Timmy laughed again, holding the flag up high. I told you she'd get mad, he said to Officer Daniels. She's been yelling all day. You bet she has, Officer Daniels said, ruffling Timmy's hair. Good job, kid. You got her going real good. The neighbors couldn't believe it. They stared at Timmy, then at Officer Daniels, then at Mrs. Karen. Timmy's a police helper, Mr. Thompson said, his watering can tipping over and spilling on his shoes. He didn't even notice. No way. Mrs. Lopez said, her mouth open. Peanut barked, like he was surprised too. Timmy. Mrs. Carter called from her window. A police kid? Really? Her cat meowed, like it was asking the same thing. Mrs. Karen didn't say anything for a second. She just stood there, white-faced and quiet. Then she shook her head fast. No, she yelled. No, no, no. That's not true. He's lying. That flag's illegal. You can't do this. She stomped her foot, but it didn't sound as loud as before. She looked smaller now, like all her big, bossy energy was gone. Officer Daniels crossed his arms. I'm not lying, ma'am, he said. Timmy's dad is my boss. Chief Jackson. You can call him if you want, but he'll tell you the same thing. Timmy's been helping us for months. That flag's part of our plan. You called 911 for no reason. False calls. That's not okay. We've got real work to do. Timmy's mom stepped out onto the porch then, her arms crossed too. See, Karen, she said. I told you it was just a flag. You didn't need to make a big deal out of it. She smiled at Timmy, proud and happy. She'd known about his secret all along, even if she didn't say it out loud before. Mrs. Karen sputtered again. But, he's just a kid, she said. He can't be, police, no. She looked around, like she wanted someone to agree with her. But no one did. The neighbors were all staring at Timmy now, their eyes wide. They weren't mad at him. They were amazed. Timmy held his flag up higher. It's true, he said, his voice clear and strong. My dad's the police chief. I help him sometimes. The flag's a signal. I put it up to see what'd happen. And you got real mad, Mrs. Karen. He laughed again, and Officer Daniels laughed with him. The crowd started talking all at once. I can't believe it. Mr. Thompson said. Timmy's a cop kid. That's so cool. Mrs. Lopez said, clapping her hands. Peanut barked again, wagging his tail. Wow, Mrs. Carter whispered. He's not just a kid. He's special. Mrs. Karen didn't know what to do. She looked at Timmy, then at Officer Daniels, then at the neighbors. Her face went from white to red again, but not mad red, embarrassed red. She'd called 911 on a police helper. She'd yelled at a kid who wasn't breaking rules, he was helping keep the neighborhood safe. She'd made a huge mistake, and everyone knew it. Officer Daniels tipped his hat to Timmy's mom. Sorry for the fuss, ma'am, he said. Timmy's just too good at this. He knew she'd flip out. He winked at Timmy, who winked back. It's okay, Timmy's mom said. She's the one who made it a mess. She looked at Mrs. Karen and shook her head. Mrs. Karen opened her mouth, then closed it. She didn't have anything to say. For the first time all day, she was quiet. She picked up her phone from the porch and turned around, her shoulders slumping. She didn't look like the boss anymore. She looked like someone who'd lost big time. Timmy. He didn't look like a loser. He stood there with Officer Daniels, holding his flag, smiling like he'd just won a prize. And he had. His secret was out, and it was awesome. Timmy wasn't just a kid. He was a police helper. And that little red flag. It was the coolest thing in Oakwood Hills. The sun was getting low in Oakwood Hills now, painting the sky with pretty orange and pink colors. The police car was still parked in front of Timmy Jackson's house, but the big surprise was over. Timmy, that 12-year-old kid with the messy brown hair, stood in his yard, holding his little red flag with the smiley face. Officer Daniels, the tall cop with the big grin, was next to him, looking proud. Mrs. Karen Baxter, the loud lady from across the street, wasn't yelling anymore. Nope, she was quiet, really quiet, and that was a first. Officer Daniels turned to Timmy's mom, who was standing on the porch with her arms crossed. He tipped his police hat to her, like a cowboy in a movie. "Sorry for the fuss, ma'am," he said, his voice nice and deep. "Timmy's just too good at stirring the pot. He knew she'd go crazy over that flag." He chuckled a little, like it was all a fun game. "And for Timmy, maybe it was." Timmy's mom smiled back. "It's okay," she said. "She's the one who made it a big deal." She looked across the street at Mrs. Karen, who was still standing on her porch, frozen like a statue. "Maybe she'll think twice next time." Her voice wasn't mad, it was calm, but you could tell she was happy Timmy came out on top. Officer Daniels nodded, then turned to Mrs. Karen. His smile went away, and his face got serious. "Next time, ma'am," he said, pointing at her, "maybe ask before you dial 911. False calls waste our time. We've got real stuff to do, helping people, catching bad guys. Not chasing flags." His voice was strong, like a teacher telling you to behave. He didn't yell, but he didn't have to. Everyone heard him loud and clear. Mrs. Karen didn't say anything. She just stood there, her arms hanging by her sides. Her face was still white, like she'd seen a ghost, and her glasses slipped down her nose a little. She looked smaller now, not like the big, bossy lady who'd been yelling all day. The neighbors watched her, and some of them giggled behind their hands. They tried to hide it, but you could hear the little laughs popping out. The HOA guy, the one in the fancy suit who'd come earlier, was still there too. He'd stayed by his shiny black car, watching everything. Now he shuffled his feet, looking down at the ground. Sorry about this," he mumbled, his voice so quiet you could barely hear it. "I didn't know, about the kid. I'll just go." He scribbled something quick on his clipboard, then hurried to his car. He didn't look at Mrs. Karen or Timmy or anybody. He just wanted to get out of there fast. The car door slammed, the engine started, and he drove off, his tires squeaking on the road. Timmy watched him go, then looked at his flag. It was still in his hand, the red cloth a little dirty from being pulled out of the ground. He grinned that sneaky grin he'd had all day and walked back to the middle of his yard. "Time to fix this," he said, mostly to himself. He bent down, dug a little hole with his fingers, and stuck the flag right back in the ground exactly where it'd been before. The smiley face looked up at the sky, bright and happy, like nothing had happened. He stood up, brushed the dirt off his hands, and turned to the crowd. "Looks better now, huh?" he said with a wink. His voice was loud enough for everyone to hear, and he pointed at the flag like it was the coolest thing ever. And to him, it was. The neighbors cheered. Not a quiet cheer, a big, loud one. "Yeah, Timmy!" Mr. Thompson yelled, clapping his hands. His watering can was on the ground now, forgotten. "That's awesome. Way to go!" Mrs. Lopez called, holding Peanut's leash tight as the little dog barked and jumped. "You showed her. Love that flag." Mrs. Carter shouted from her window, her cat meowing next to her. The whole crowd was smiling, clapping, and talking all at once. They weren't mad at Timmy anymore. They weren't worried about him getting in trouble. They were happy, really happy, because Timmy wasn't just a kid. He was a hero. Well, everyone was cheering except one person. Mrs. Karen. She didn't clap. She didn't smile. She didn't say a word. She just stood there on her porch, staring at Timmy and his flag. Her face went from white to red again, but not mad red this time, embarrassed red. She'd yelled all day, called the HOA, called 911, and made a huge fuss. And for what? Timmy wasn't in trouble. He was a police helper. His dad was the police chief. That flag wasn't illegal, it was special. And now everyone knew it. She turned around slow, her slippers dragging on the porch. She didn't look at the neighbors or Officer Daniels or Timmy. She just walked to her door, her shoulders all slumped down. She opened it, stepped inside, and snap, her curtains shut fast. The windows went dark, like she didn't want anyone to see her anymore. For once, Mrs. Karen had nothing to say. No yelling, no muttering, no bossy words. She was done. Timmy's mom laughed from the porch. "Well, that's a first," she said. "Quiet, Karen. Never thought I'd see the day. She looked at Timmy and shook her head, but she was smiling. You're something else, kid. Officer Daniels grinned too. He sure is, he said. Best helper I've got. Sorry again, ma'am. Didn't mean to scare anybody. He tipped his hat one more time, then turned to Timmy. Good work today, buddy. You got her good. Thanks. Timmy said, giving him a big high five. It was fun. He held up his flag and waved it a little, the smiley face flapping in the breeze. Officer Daniels laughed, climbed back into his police car, and started the engine. See you later, Timmy, he called as he drove off, the car rolling down the street and out of sight. The neighbors didn't leave right away. They stayed outside, talking and laughing. Mr. Thompson walked over to Timmy's yard, his hands in his pockets. You're a cool kid, Timmy, he said. I didn't know you were a police helper. That's amazing. Yeah, Timmy said, kicking a little dirt with his sneaker. It's not a big deal. I just help my dad sometimes. The flags are signal. I wanted to see what she'd do. He pointed across the street at Mrs. Karen's house, where the curtains were still shut tight. Mrs. Lopez came over too, Peanut trotting next to her. You're brave, she said. Standing up to her like that? Wow. She's always yelling at somebody, but you shut her up. Timmy shrugged. I didn't really do much, he said. She got mad all by herself. He smiled, and the neighbors laughed. They liked that. Timmy wasn't bragging, he was just being Timmy. But they all knew he'd done something big. He turned Mrs. Karen's big, loud day into a quiet, embarrassing one. Mrs. Carter leaned out her window again. Put that flag up anytime, Timmy, she said. It's the best thing in this neighborhood. Her cat meowed like it agreed, and everyone laughed some more. Timmy's mom called from the porch. All right, everybody, she said. Show's over. Time to go home. She waved at the neighbors, still smiling. Thanks for cheering him on. The crowd started to break up. Mr. Thompson picked up his watering can and headed back to his house. See you, Timmy, he said. Keep that flag flying. Mrs. Lopez tugged Peanut's leash. Bye, Timmy. You're the best, she called. Mrs. Carter pulled her window shut, but not before yelling, good job, kid, one last time. Soon, it was just Timmy and his mom outside. The street was quiet again, no yelling, no police cars, no HOA guys. Just the little red flag standing in the yard, its smiley face looking happy as ever. Timmy sat on the porch steps, his lemonade glass empty now. He looked at the flag and grinned. That was fun, he said. His mom sat next to him. You're trouble, she said, but she wasn't mad. She ruffled his hair. You knew she'd freak out, didn't you? Maybe, Timmy said, laughing. She's loud. I just wanted to see how loud. He leaned back on his hands, looking at Mrs. Karen's house. The curtains didn't move. The door didn't open. She was gone for now, at least. You think she'll try again? His mom asked, raising an eyebrow. Nah, Timmy said. She's too embarrassed. Everybody knows now. She won't mess with me anymore. He sounded sure, like he'd figured her out. And he probably had. Mrs. Karen liked being the boss, but today, she'd lost. Big time. The sun was almost gone now, just a little bit of light left in the sky. Timmy's flag glowed a tiny bit in the dark, its red color standing out against the grass. It wasn't just a flag anymore, it was a winner. It had beaten Mrs. Karen, shut her up, and made the neighbors cheer. Timmy's secret wasn't just cool, it was the best thing that had happened in Oakwood Hills all day. His mom stood up. Come on, she said. Dinner's ready. You've had enough fun for one day. She held out her hand, and Timmy took it, hopping up from the steps. Okay, he said, but he looked back at the flag one more time. It looks good there, huh? Yeah, his mom said. It does. Leave it. Let her see it tomorrow. She winked at him, and they both laughed as they went inside. Across the street, Mrs. Karen's house stayed dark. No lights came on. No curtains peeked open. She was hiding, licking her wounds like a dog that got scared off. She'd been so loud, so sure, so bossy, and now she was nothing. Timmy's secret had shut her down for good. Justice was served, and it felt great. The night settled over Oakwood Hills, quiet and peaceful. The flag stayed in the yard, a little red dot in the dark. Timmy was inside, eating dinner, smiling to himself. The neighbors were in their houses, still talking about what happened. And Mrs. Karen? She was done. For once, she had nothing to say. And that was the best part of all. And that's how it all went down in Oakwood Hills. A little kid named Timmy Jackson, just 12 years old with messy brown hair and a sneaky smile, turned everything upside down with a tiny red flag. That flag had a goofy smiley face on it, drawn with a marker, and it didn't look like much. But oh boy, it was so much more than it seemed. Timmy took that flag and flipped the tables on a big, loud bully Mrs. Karen Baxter, the lady who thought she ruled the neighborhood. And he did it without yelling or fighting or being mean. He did it just by being himself. Think about that for a second. Mrs. Karen was tall and bossy, always telling everyone what to do. She had her phone and her rules and her loud voice, and she thought that made her the strongest person around. She saw Timmy's flag and decided it was junk, something to get mad about. She called the HOA, she called 911, she made a huge fuss all because she thought a kid couldn't be anything special. But Timmy? He was small and quiet, just standing there with his lemonade, not making a big deal out of anything. And yet, he had the biggest surprise up his sleeve. Sometimes, the smallest people have the biggest tricks. That's what Timmy showed us. He didn't look like much, just a kid in a blue t-shirt and sneakers with holes in them. But he was a police helper, working with his dad, the chief of the whole police station. That little red flag. It wasn't junk. It was a signal, a secret code he used to help keep the neighborhood safe. Mrs. Karen never saw that coming. Nobody did. And that's the cool part, the quiet ones, the ones you don't notice, they might be hiding something amazing. So next time you see someone quiet, don't count them out. Maybe they're like Timmy, waiting for the perfect moment to shine. Maybe they've got a secret, a talent, a plan, something that'll surprise you when you least expect it. Mrs. Karen counted Timmy out. She thought he was just a silly kid with a dumb flag. But he wasn't. He was smart and brave and tricky, and he turned her big, loud day into a quiet, embarrassing one. That's what happens when you judge people too fast, you miss the good stuff. Let's think about what happened. Timmy didn't win by being loud or mean. He didn't yell back at Mrs. Karen or call her names. He didn't even get mad when she called the HOA or the cops. He just stayed calm, sipped his lemonade, and let her make a fool of herself. That's a big lesson right there. You don't have to fight fire with fire. Sometimes, you can just stand there, be yourself, and let the truth do the work. Timmy's truth was awesome. He was a helper, a kid who did big things in a small way. And when everyone found out, it was Mrs. Karen who looked silly, not him. What do you think? Would you have guessed Timmy's secret? I bet a lot of people wouldn't. He didn't act like a hero from a movie, with a cape or a loud voice. He was just a regular kid, doing regular stuff, until bam, the big reveal hit. That's what makes this story so fun. It's twisty and sneaky, and it keeps you guessing. Did you think the flag was just a toy? Did you think Mrs. Karen would win? Or did you have a feeling Timmy had something up his sleeve? Tell me in the comments below, I'd love to know. This whole adventure started with something tiny, a little red flag in the grass. It didn't look important. It didn't look like it could change anything. But it did. It changed everything in Oakwood Hills that day. It made the neighbors cheer, it made Mrs. Karen hide, and it made Timmy the star of the show. That's another cool thing to think about. Little things can be big. A flag, a smile, a quiet kid, they can turn the world around if you give them a chance. Imagine if Timmy hadn't put that flag in the yard. Mrs. Karen wouldn't have gotten mad. The HOA guy wouldn't have come. Officer Daniels wouldn't have shown up. The neighbors wouldn't have found out Timmy's secret. Everything would have stayed boring and normal. But Timmy did it. He took a chance, stuck that flag in the ground, and waited to see what would happen. And what happened was amazing. So maybe that's a good idea for all of us. Try something small, something fun, and see where it takes you. You never know what might come next. Timmy's story makes you feel good, doesn't it? It's not just about him beating Mrs. Karen, though that part's pretty great. It's about being yourself, even when someone's trying to push you down. Mrs. Karen wanted Timmy to feel small. She wanted him to take his flag and go away. But he didn't. He stood there, calm and happy, and let his secret shine. That's brave. That's strong. And it's something anyone can do, not with a flag or a police dad, but with whatever makes them special. Think about your own life. Do you have something cool inside you? Maybe you're good at drawing, like Timmy with his smiley face. Maybe you're great at helping friends or making people laugh. Maybe you're quiet, but you've got big ideas. Whatever it is, don't hide it. Don't let the Mrs. Karens of the world tell you it's not good enough. Timmy didn't hide. He put his flag out there, and when the time was right, he showed everyone what he could do. You can do that too. Be you, and let it shine. The neighbors in Oakwood Hills learned something that day. They saw Timmy in a new way. Before, he was just the kid down the street, the one who played outside and drank lemonade. But now, he was the kid who helped the police, the kid who stood up to a bully, the kid who made the neighborhood smile. They cheered for him, and they'll probably never forget him. Mrs. Karen learned something too, even if she didn't like it. She learned that yelling doesn't always win. Sometimes, the quiet ones come out on top. What about you? What did you learn from Timmy? Maybe it's that little things matter. Maybe it's that secrets can be awesome. Maybe it's that bullies don't always get their way. Whatever it is, hold on to it. Keep it in your heart. Because stories like this aren't just for fun, they're for thinking, for feeling, for growing. Timmy's tale is a twisty one, full of surprises, and it's got a happy ending that sticks with you. Let's picture it one more time. The sun's down now, and Oakwood Hills is dark. Timmy's inside, eating dinner with his mom, laughing about the crazy day. His little red flag is still in the yard, standing tall in the moonlight. Across the street, Mrs. Karen's house is quiet, her curtains shut tight. The neighbors are in bed, dreaming about flags and police cars and a kid who turned everything around. It's peaceful, it's happy, and it's all because of Timmy. So here's the big question again, would you have guessed Timmy's secret? Did you see it coming, or did it catch you by surprise? Drop your answer in the comments, I really want to hear what you think. And if you love this twisty tale, give it a thumbs up. It's a story about a kid, a flag, and a big win, and it's one you can tell your friends about. Share it, talk about it, and maybe even make your own flag someday. Who knows what surprises you've got up your sleeve. This isn't goodbye, it's see you later. There's more stories out there, more kids like Timmy, more adventures waiting to happen. So stick around, keep watching, and let's find the next big surprise together. Timmy showed us how it's done. Now it's your turn to shine. See you in the next one.